I love anything that has a pocket, so I made this pocket scarf on my 48 needle circular knitting machine, and I will show step by step how I made it. A few things for this project is it does take quite a bit of yarn because we have to make a pretty long scarf. So I'm going to use up this yarn I have. It's the I Love This yarn in the Cobblestone Ivy. This might look familiar. I made a tutorial on this ear warmer a few weeks ago, and so I'm going to use the two other skeins that I bought. They're 252 yards each, plus the leftover half skein from our ear warmer that I made. So I'm going to use up every bit of this yarn to make this scarf. And then you also need waste yarn in a similar weight yarn, but in a contrasting color. So to begin, we're going to start with our waste yarn for our cast on, and I start that on the white needle, and you go over and under each needle all the way around one time. And you don't want this too tight, and you don't want it really loose. You need it about just right so it can create a good foundation for your project. Once you get back to the white needle, we're going to put it in the yarn holder, and in the middle tensioner is what I used. And we're going to do this little yarn ball, can maybe do 7 or 8 rows. Once I'm back to my white needle after I've done 7 or 8 rows, I put it in the middle of my machine, and now we're going to add in the project yarn. And you want to put it on the same side of the needle as the tail of the waste yarn to start your rows so they're even. And you'll want to do the same thing once your skein runs out and you're going to add in your next skein of yarn. You want to put it, you don't want to skip a needle, you want to put it in that same location. So this is going to be 400 rows. So the one thing I do recommend is I am hand cranking it all because this is a thicker number 4 medium weight yarn. So once I get a few rows started and it's all looking really good, I'm going to turn my machine and move my yarn so that the handle is facing me, and then I line up my shoulder with the handle, and this helps with some of that repetitive motion. And then I move the yarn still in front of the yarn tensioner on the ground. Once you get the 400 rows done, and I end at the white needle for the 400th row, I then add in my waste yarn for the cast off. We don't need to pick up any stitches. We're just going to let this little yarn ball run out. So it did about 10 rows. And then once it runs out, I do 2 more cranks around the machine and the project will fall off the yarn. You'll also want to, as you're cranking these rows, is you want to roll up your project in the middle so it doesn't twist because it is really long. It ended up being about 2 evenings for me to crank all 400 rows. And then on the inside, you just want to secure where your tail end of the project yarns came together and then turn it right side out. And it ended up being 84 inches total in length for the 400 rows using this yarn. So now we're going to take the tube of our project. There's 2 ends, and we want to sew down our tubes flat. So how I do this is why you want the waste yarn in a contrasting color, because you're going to see the first row of your project color is sandwiched in between the waste yarn of the pink, and so that's how you can see where your live stitches are of your project yarn. And then I put the tail yarn at the bottom, and then I start on one side and count up 24, and I kind of mark that, and then I count up 24 starting from the other side because we have 48 needles, and so you want 24 on each side. This makes sure our project is even and flat. I pick up both 24th stitches that are at the top opposite of the tail end of the project yarns, and then I slip stitch them back and forth all the way down to flatten the tube. And it's making kind of like an X shape. If you find that you see a hole in this X shape when you go down, you've missed a stitch, so you want to go back. And then down here at the bottom, there's sometimes a few little ones that are hidden down in here. So you want to make sure you grab all 48 stitches to secure them in place, because once we remove the waste yarn, if they're not secure, it will unravel the project. So once we get down to our last loop that's on the hook, you just pull through the project tail yarn and it secures it. and then we can remove our waste yarn. And we're going to do this on both sides of our scarf to flatten the tubes. I have a whole video about how to remove waste yarn without cutting it out on my TikTok page, so you can check it out, but it should look like this once your waste yarn is removed, and none of the stitches should fall out. So now to make our pockets, you want to make sure your project isn't twisted. You want to lay it out, and then we're just going to fold up the bottom of both sides of our scarf. And I did 8 inches. I measured that on both sides when I folded up, and then I used a stitch saver to secure it in place. So the next part, I hope I can explain this, but you want to make sure your project isn't twisted, and you want to mattress stitch the same row starting at here, going all the way down and around for your pocket. So as you can see, when I trace this row, it kind of starts to twist off to the front. And so I'm just going to mark it here. This is at the bottom where we're going to start the mattress stitch. And so we just want to move the fabric to make sure that stitch is on the side, or else if you don't do this, it seemed to kind of twist the fabric, or you start picking up a different row and it twists the fabric. So I just kind of move the fabric around and I trace it starting at the top of the pocket, going down around the U and back up to the top where they're going to come together. And I just make sure it is the same row of stitches that we are going to mattress stitch to keep it from twisting. So once I have the fabric moved, and so I'm going to work with that row, I just made sure it was 8 inches again, and then I just put a stitch marker to secure the other side for now. And I liked to mattress stitch from the bottom up. When I tried it from the top down, it didn't make the corner come out as nice, so I took it out and I redid it. And so I just feed in some extra project yarn, and I just do a loose knot to begin with. We'll secure it down later, but I do it this way and then put it up through the middle, and then we start our mattress stitch. And I just made it a loose knot because if you start picking up the wrong stitch in your rows, it's really easy to remove and you can just redo. So this kind of just takes some practice on knowing where to do your mattress stitch. But like I said, when I did the one I didn't like the way I did it, it comes out pretty easily. And then I will do a close-up when we get to the lighter color of the yarn to show you where you pick up, but it's pretty much a little V on every other side of the stitch, and in between that V there's a little horizontal piece of yarn, and that's what you pick up going back and forth all the way up the side of your pocket. And then a good way to know to make sure your project isn't twisted and you're not jumping over to another set of stitches is if you look here, you kind of see this ribbing when they're being pulled together, and it's kind of nice. This is 2 different colors, so you can see this when it's coming together, and you're just going to follow that line up. And so if you see that line get broken up and it looks a little different, you probably picked up the wrong part of the stitch. I've done that many times. And then so here's the V of the stitch, and here's that ribbing line that we're following all the way up right there. And then our V is to the side of it. And then right in between there is that little horizontal piece of yarn. And this is how I mattress stitch. If you mattress stitch a different way, there's no wrong way. This is just our projects. You can do it however you would like. This is the way I like to do it. And so I will meet you back when we get to the top. And so here's how the mattress stitch looks going all the way up. And I just have a few more left. Once you get to the top of the pocket, then we're just going to knot it to secure it. And then I weave in my ends and I cut off any excess. And then you're going to do this mattress stitch again on the other side of your pocket and then on the other 2 sides of the other side of the scarf to make the second pocket, and then your pockets are done. So thank you so much for watching my tutorial. I hope you enjoy making your own pocket scarf, and like and follow for more.